Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is the 1930 Cleveland Rosenblums ABL basketball champions. This was the third championship in 5 years for the Cleveland Rosenblums and their last one. This was they were the first pro basketball dynasty. And again, they were playing in the American Basketball League. Home games in Cleveland were played at Cleveland Public Auditorium. This was the American Basketball League season of 1929 to 1930, and the last full year for the Rosenblums, because the next season they folded partway through the season. Again, the season was divided into two halves. The winners of the first half would play, or did play, the winners of the second half of the season in the championship series. The first half champions were the Cleveland Rosenblums, who finished at 17-7, winning percentage of .708. Second place team was the Brooklyn Visitation, 15-9, 2 games out of first. Third place, the Rochester Centrals, 14-10. Fourth place, the Fort Wayne Hoosiers, 12-12. Fifth place, the Chicago Bruins, also 12-12. Sixth place, the Paterson, New Jersey Whirlwinds, 10-14. Seventh place, the Syracuse All-Americans, who were 4-20. They dropped out of the league on January 6, 1930. And in eighth and last place, the New York Celtics, who were 5-5. They also dropped out of the league on December 10, 1929. Second half of the season, the Rochester Centrals finished in first place with a record of 19-11. Second place, the Cleveland Rosenblums, 18-12, 1 game out of first. Third place, the Chicago Bruins, 17-13. Fourth place, the Brooklyn Visitation, 15-15. Fifth place, the Fort Wayne Hoosiers, 13-17. And in sixth and last place, the New Jersey Whirlwinds, 8-22, winning percentage of .267, 11 games out of first. In the championship series, the Cleveland Rosenblums, first half champions, faced the Rochester Central, second half champions, and Cleveland won the series 4-1 game. The first game 1 was in Rochester, and Rochester won that game 20-16. Game 2 was in Cleveland. The Rosenblums won 18-17. Game 3 was back in Rochester, and the Rosenblums won 18-13. Game 4 was in Cleveland. Rosenblums won 23-16. And Game 5, Cleveland won 21-15. Shortly after the season started, the stock market crashed, and the Great Depression was coming. The biggest crowd of the championship series was Game 5 in Cleveland. 3,345 fans came to Public Auditorium to see the Rosenblums, or the Rosies, become ABL champions for the third time in 5 years. Once again, the owner of the team, for whom the team was named after, was Max Rosenblum, who was the owner of the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1919 to 1931. Max Rosenblum. The player coach was Dave Kerr, who was a guard, forward, center. He played in 10 games, scored 3 points, an average of 0.3 points per game. He was a Rosenblums player from 1925 to 1930, and Rosenblum's player coach from 1927 to 1930. This was the end of his pro basketball career. Dave Kerr. Pete Berry was a forward guard. He played in 56 games, scored 193 points for an average of 3.4 points per game. And Berry was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1928 to 1931. Pete Berry. George Glasgow was a forward guard. He was 28 years old, 5'11", 150 pounds. He did not go to college. He played in 25 games, scored 86 points for an average of 3.4 points per game. George Glasgow was a high school basketball star in Trenton, New Jersey. He broke into pro basketball with Germantown in the Eastern Basketball League in 1920. Glasgow played beside two giants of the early game, Winnie Kincaid and Harry Huff. Both players were close to 40 years old and playing on pure guile. The team struggled to win only 5 of their first 20 games. Inserted into the starting lineup, Glasgow's speed and enthusiasm revitalized Germantown. The energized squad won 16 of 20 games en route to the second half title and then crushed Reading in the playoffs to win the EBL title after the EBL disbanded in January of 1923. Glasgow spent 3 successful seasons in the Metropolitan League and 5 more in the American Basketball League. In 1929-1930, his final ABL season, he was a member of the champion Cleveland Rosenblums. Glasgow played forward during most of his 15-year pro career. He was a good shooter and an outstanding two-handed dribbler. His game was characterized by speed. No defender could stay with Glasgow long enough to prevent his gazelle-like dashes to the basket. In 1932, Glasgow joined his hometown EBL Trenton squad at midseason. After his arrival, the team won 14 of 15 regular season games and then defeated the Philadelphia Sphas in the playoffs to win the championship. Both teams joined the reincarnated ABL the next season, where they quickly renewed their battle for supremacy. Each club won a half of the ABL split season, but Philadelphia prevailed in the title series. Glasgow played in the majors for another season and remained active in Trenton basketball circles as a player and coach throughout the decade. He was 5 feet 10 inches, 150 pounds, born in 1901. He died in 1983 at age 82. He played pro basketball from 1919 to 1934 with Lennoxville, the Germantown Geraniums, Coatesville Coats, Brooklyn Pros, Trenton All-Stars, Brooklyn Brooklyns, the Yonkers Chippewas, Philadelphia Holy Dame, Trenton Royal Bengals, Greenpoint Knights of St. Anthony, the Philadelphia Tri-Council, Pottsville Big Five, the Pottsville Miners, Brooklyn Arcadians, Washington Palace Five, Philadelphia Warriors, Fort Wayne Hoosiers, Cleveland Rosenblums, Philadelphia Jaspers, Union City Reds, Trenton Moose, Boston Trojans, and Jersey Reds. George Glasgow. Joe Lapchick was a center forward. He played in 52 games, scored 186 points for an average of 3.6 points per game. And Lapchick was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1928 to 1931. Joe Lapchick. Dutch Dunnert was a guard forward. He played in 56 games, scored 211 points for an average of 3.8 points per game. And Dunnert was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1928 to 1931. Dutch Dunnert. Carl Husta was a guard forward. He played in 56 games, scored 331 points for an average of 5.9 points per game. And Husta was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1925 to 1931. Carl Husta. Red Skernick was a guard forward. He got in 43 games, scored 101 points, 2.3 points per game. And Skernick was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1926 to 1930. Red Skernick. Cookie Cunningham was a center guard. He played in 4 games, scored 21 points, an average of 5.3 points per game. Cunningham was with the Cleveland Rosenblums from 1926 to 1928 and from 1929 to 1930. Cookie Cunningham. Ray Dickerson was a forward guard. He was 21 years old, 6 foot flat, 165 pounds. He played college at Northeastern Oklahoma, Tahlequah. He got in 5 games, scored 10 points for 2 points per game. Dickerson was born in 1908 and died in 1993 at age 74. His hometown was Tahlequah, Oklahoma. He played pro basketball from 1928 to 1937 with Olson's Terrible Swedes, the Cleveland Rosenblums, Akron Firestone, and Ritz Pennsylvanians. Ray Dickerson. Scotty McDougal was a center forward guard. He was 5'7", 160 pounds. He did not go to college. He played in 4 games, scored 2 points, an average of 0.5 points per game. McDougal was born in 1906 and died in 1975 at age 69. His hometown was Cleveland, Ohio, and he had just the 1 year of pro basketball playing career. Scotty McDougal. Cliff Anderson was a center. He was 26 years old, 6'4", 175 pounds. He went to college at Central College of New York. He got in 1 game, did not score. Cliff Anderson played 2 years of varsity basketball at City College in New York under the tutelage of famed early pro basketball star Nat Holman, who said that Anderson was the best big man he had ever coached. Anderson, the team's best defender and leading scorer, was instrumental in the success 22-3 record over 2 seasons of the CCNY squad. Anderson had a meteoric pro basketball career. Within a few seasons as a pro, he ranked as one of the best big men in the game. For an era when most centers seldom scored very much, Anderson stood out because he was usually the leading scorer on most of the teams he played for. Tall at 6 foot 4 inches by the standards of the era, Anderson elevated the ball over his head away from shorter defenders and released his shot without bringing it down to his chest. In 1926, after just 3 seasons of pro basketball, Anderson announced that he was retiring from the game to enter business. While Anderson did continue to play for a number of years afterward on a limited basis, his focus definitely shifted away from the sport. Anderson had a long and successful association with the Kinney Shoe Corporation, eventually becoming the company president in 1959. He also served on the board of directors of F.W. Woolworth and the Coca-Cola Bottling Company. He was born in 1903 and died in 1992 at age 89. His hometown was New York City. He played pro basketball from 1922 to 1932 for the Bronx Starling, the Gray Big Five, Kingston Shirtmakers, Long Island Pros, Astoria Lincoln Council Knights of Columbus, the Greenpoint Knights of St. Anthony, the Brooklyn Nonpareils, Trenton Royal Bengals, Brooklyn Visitation, Cleveland Rosenblums, and New York Celtics. Cliff Anderson. Dink Irwin was a forward guard. He was 23 years old, 6'3", 200 pounds. He went to college at Temple, played in 2 games, did not score. He was born in 1906 and died in 1978 at age 72. His hometown was Downingtown, Pennsylvania. He played pro basketball from 1926 to 1931 with the Downingtown Moose, Camden Millville, Kennett Square, Cleveland Rosenblums, Patterson, New Jersey Whirlwinds, and Wilmington. So after the regular season, the ABL Championship Series was played, and the Cleveland Rosenblums defeated the Rochester Centrals 4-1 to win their 3rd championships in 5 years, and they were the first pro basketball dynasty. The 1926, 1929, and 1930 Cleveland Rosenblums ABL champions 3 years out of 5. Well, that concludes today's presentation. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.